These are some important concepts that we have covered. The for loop is used as the counted loop, when you know that you want to repeat the action a specified number of times. A nested for loop is when you have one for loop inside of another. Some common applications include looping through the elements of a vector or a matrix. When you're looping through arrays, meaning either a vector or a matrix, you use the loop variable or variables as the indices into the elements. If what you're doing is to create a vector or matrix, you should always pre-allocate the vector or matrix before the for loops. Loops are used in many languages to perform operations on every element in a vector or a matrix. However, in MATLAB, this is usually not necessary. We can vectorize our code instead, which means using the built-in functions and operators in MATLAB rather than using for loops to iterate through all of the elements in a vector or a matrix. Here are some common pitfalls. Forgetting that subplot numbers the plots row-wise rather than column-wise. Forgetting to initialize a running sum to 0 or a running product to 1, and not pre-allocating a vector before creating it in a for loop. Programming style guidelines are things that are good ideas. In for loops, you should not use the names I or j for iterator variables if you want to use the built-in constants I and j for the square root of -1. You should always indent the action of your loops so that it's easy to see what they are. Whenever you know the size of a vector or matrix and you're going to create it in a loop or nested loop, you should always begin by pre-allocating the vector or matrix to the correct size. In MATLAB, you should always vectorize code whenever possible, which means using the built-in operators and functions rather than using for loops to iterate through a vector or matrix. And if the loop variable is just being used to specify how many times the action of a loop is to be executed, it's best to use the colon operator 1:n to specify that you're going to repeat the action n times.